Using the turkey carcass from Thanksgiving, we're going to make turkey noodle soup. First, I filled a pot with a few gallons of water. I then added the turkey carcass. You want the carcass to be mostly covered with water when you start. I then diced up about a cup of celery and a small onion and added them to the pot. I'm not dicing the onion really well though, because the veggies aren't going to be in the finished product. They're just there to flavor the stock. I then added about 1.5 teaspoons of salt, a half a teaspoon of ground pepper, and a couple of cloves of minced garlic, and I put the pot on the stove to boil. We're going to let this come to a rolling boil and let it cook undisturbed for about 2 hours. I cooked it this long because I had left a lot of meat on the bird and I wanted it to get very tender. While that was boiling, I got to cutting up the other veggies for the soup. But don't add these yet, trust me on this. When we finished making Thanksgiving dinner, we had most of the sleeve of celery left over from making the stuffing, and a shallot from the green beans. So I grabbed those, as well as a bag of baby carrots and an onion, and started dicing them all up. I went ahead and put them into a bowl while I waited for the turkey stock to cook. Knowing what I know now, I should have added a lot more salt and pepper. If you add 1 tablespoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper per gallon of liquid, it'll probably come out right, or it may still need a bit more salt and pepper. I always like to err on the side of caution. I mixed the veggies out of habit, not because it's required. After a couple hours, I drained the liquid from the pot and set it aside. You only want liquid in the pot when you start cooking again. Most of the stuff being strained out in the beginning are the vegetables that we added to the stock for flavor, and should be discarded, as there may be small bones or pieces of cartilage mixed in. And nobody likes unexpected surprises in their soup. Once I removed most of the stock, I started trying to grab the big pieces of meat and put them on the cutting board to start cooling. I also collected some of the large bones and skin from the bird and put them into the strainer and threw them away. After that, I walked away for about 20 minutes so that I could allow the meat to cool. Don't mind the frying pan. I only used it to hold the remnants of the pot so that I could get the rest of the stock and clean the pot. There was a small black spot on the bottom where the turkey had been sitting, and I didn't want it to mix in with the soup. Knowing what I know now, I should have added a lot more salt and pepper. If you add 1 tablespoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper per gallon of liquid, it'll probably come out right, or it may still need a bit more salt and pepper. I always like to err on the side of caution. After the meat is cool enough to handle, sort through it to grab only meat and set that meat aside. You want to be thorough and remove all of the inedible and undesirable pieces as you're sorting through. Once the pot was clean, I put the stock back into the pot and started sorting through the remnants I had set aside. I should have started cooking the stock in the pot before I started cutting up the meat, but I forgot at first. Ideally, you will get the stock to a rolling boil again before adding anything into the pot. If you add the meat to the pot right away, it'll sink to the bottom and it'll probably get burned as the stock heats back up, ruining your entire soup. If necessary, you can add the vegetables to the stock before it gets to a boil, as the vegetables aren't as dense as the meat and tend to float more. I wanted to use the same bowl for the chopped up meat, so I added the veggies. As you just saw, I started cutting up the meat that I had already deboned. At this point, it should mostly fall apart, but use a knife so that you can avoid large pieces of meat. I also added another gallon of water to replace the water that had boiled away while making the stock. I stirred it up and then I walked away to let it cook. Once you've added the turkey and brought the soup back to a rolling boil, add the noodles. I normally use extra wide egg noodles. Wait for it to return to a rolling boil and let it boil for 10 minutes after adding the noodles. After that, your soup is ready to serve. Be sure to like and subscribe if you liked the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned to watch my wife and I talk about the actual food from the video.
Yeah, hey. It's a health, yeah? Yeah.
So what do you think?
Tasty, could use a little bit salt, but that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I prefer a little bit more salt too, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, he constantly complains about salt all the time now.
Only in my cooking. Most other cooking is too salty.
Constantly says he doesn't use enough salt. Or he uses too much salt. Or
That was
something
only
about salt.
once. That was only once. That was only once.
No, it wasn't.
Too much salt? I think that was only once.
Nope.
You sure?
Positive. He's a good cook. He's a very good cook. But there's something about salt in him, it never sits right.
I tend to err on the side of caution and use too little because you can always add more.
There you go. That's not why I'm drinking a lot of water, by the way. I'm just trying to stay hydrated because, you know, when you feel icky, that's what you need to do, is just stay hydrated.
You're so funny.
I'm a massage therapist for a living. I'm going to promote water like crazy.
I get that. I know that. I know that
Do
already.
you? Because you never drink water.
There's plenty of water in this. That's good water. So one thing I would do differently with it is I'd probably add more spices. I went really light on the spices this time. I put salt and pepper in there, of course, and I put celery and carrots in there. I also use a lot of parslel, ground parslel.
It's because I grow it and he eats it like raw out of the garden.
Because it's good. It's a cross between celery and parsley, so
It's fun.
it's like adding both. Next week, we'll be introducing you to the Lazy Cook's beef stroganoff.